there! Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you'll stick around with me today and paint this Sunflower and Peonies watercolor in a glass jar. Today I'm using my size 6 Intuition round brush by Artegria, my Sonnet and SeamiArt watercolors, and I wanted to tell you about this great new paper that my friends at Funto sent me. This 140-pound watercolor pad is 30 pages. It's dual-sided, so you actually get 60 surfaces to paint on. Right now, the set of 3 is $24.99 on the funtoart.com website. Use code Patricia10OFF for 10% savings. I hope you try it. And let's get started. Okay, so as I've been doing a bit lately, I want to start with my glass jar, and I plan to do some mixed florals in a jar, but I just want to kind of let intuition lead. I just want to paint and see where it goes. So I don't really have details in mind. I'm preparing my indigo right now for my jar. I'm using my new Funto watercolor pad. And so I'm just making a wide stroke over here on the left side. And then I am going to rinse my brush, rinse that pigment off mostly, and then just kind of come up the right side, do this kind of quickly. I try not to worry too much about perfection, but I do notice that that my jars quite often look a bit imperfect. So I'm giving this just a little more effort to have some symmetry on that right side. It is challenging, friends. It's challenging for me. But that's also why I don't try to get it perfect too hard. I mean, I just, you can go a bit slower and you can get it more perfect. And if that is important to you, then please do it. But also, please be okay with me if I don't. Okay, and so I'm just dropping some pigment back into here and into the bottom of this. I like to see if I can leave the bottom of this somewhat clear. Okay, now I'm really rinsing this, trying to only have water, so I'm even using the bottom of my jar to help clean my brush. And then I just kind of want to make sure I don't have too much water on here because I don't want it pushing the pigment, but I want it to blend that a little. So if you have too much water, it can kind of push the pigment. It's kind of a neat look, and it looks kind of like a bloom. Ferning, I sometimes call it. I just kind of have my own terms for it because of how it looks to me. And but I was kind of trying to avoid that. Now, for me, it's an interesting look, especially in water. I think it sometimes it just kind of makes sense to me. So I'm just kind of fine-tuning the bottom of this jar a little, and I did go in and kind of wet that, and so I'm just going to kind of drop and push a little pigment in there. And see, that's just fine by me. I feel like there's a little shadow over here, it's a little lighter over here, and then you have some of the hard highlights where where the pigment and water did not saturate the paper. This paper is dreamy to work with, by the way. It's really fun. I think I'd like to do some peonies in here. And, I love my madder lake for that. It's just such a nice pinkish red, reddish pink. I just love it. So I'm just prepping a little bit of it here. Get a little bit more water into that. And I like to kind of just drag my brush at the corner of these wells, and that helps me kind of conserve some of the pigment when I think I maybe have a little too much on my brush. I'm not rinsing it into my water, so I'm not wasting it. So I'm going to do one right here. I'm going to start with these 3 brush strokes right here in the center. And these 3 quick 4-ish little strokes on that back side of the flower. And then these 3 quick strokes here. Did not mean for that one to go up so far, but it is okay. And then I just usually like a few little of these. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to drag off what I can of that pigment. See, I still had quite a bit on there. And you know, you don't have to do this, but sometimes I just think, oh, you know, I just dipped a whole brush full of pigment into my water and it's gone forever now. And so I kind of like to do that. I just conserve it a little bit. Then I've taken my brush, I've rinsed it off, and then I've dragged along the side of the jar to just take some of that excess water so that I don't end up with any dripping. I'm just going to take the tip of my brush, and I'm kind of crisscrossing some of these strokes here a little bit, but I am touching these petals where I have already brushed them, and even kind of into the petal. And what I find that does is it just nicely softens the petal and kind of bleeds some of that pigment out, and then it just ends up with these kind of layers of pigment and tone in there. So it just kind of naturally creates some depth for you, and it's so easy. So then kind of crisscrossing some of these marks, and now up here where the pigment was just kind of dry and maybe a little resistant to moving, I just kind of pushed some of the pigment. So some of these dry places, I just kind of pushed out into the water that I painted. And then as you have pigment on your brush that you've kind of picked up in this process, you can brush elsewhere. And you just decide how to deposit that and what you like to do. There you go. There's that first peony. And we'll let that dry. And we'll work on another one over here. Just a little higher. Now, I don't know if you saw, I had a drop of water right here hanging on my ferrule. And so I just dabbed that off on my cloth that I keep handy for that reason. Okay. And then just rinse that. That one I did not feel I had very much pigment left on my brush, and I didn't. So I just went straight into the water rather than dragging it off, and it worked very well. And then I'm just occasionally kind of wetting my brush a bit and then dragging that off the side of my jar. And I'm kind of doing that in a way that doesn't entirely rinse my brush. I'm doing it like that so that I keep a little bit of pigment on there, because I kind of want to be able to have that in that next layer. Peonies are so fun. They're so soft and just fun to make. And now I want to get some greens in here. I usually like to also get a couple of leaves for my, whatever that flower is I've started with. I tend to like to do that lately rather than waiting a little more to the end, because it helps me make sure that I have some places reserved for leaves where ordinarily I might be filling that with flowers. And so I like to do that. I want to start over here because I want to avoid having this green bleed into my madder red. If I do that, it's not the end of the world, but it makes kind of a muddy, you know, brown and, yeah, brown. Green and the pink together kind of make a brown. So the way I like to do these leaves is just kind of several brush strokes. And I like to do it like that so that there's kind of some texture in there. And I'm going to drape this one over the jar. And see, just kind of giving those some different shape, and see how I have a little bit of bleed up in there. I'm not worried about that. And then how about one over here? And I'm doing that because I have an idea for another leaf that I want coming out of here. And so that just leaves that open for that. You get the puns free. Isn't that nice? And then just kind of taking these different directions. So, you know, sometimes these leaves kind of going up above the flower, behind and above. And I did end up with a little bit of that kind of bleeding, but it really is okay. Okay, now I want to add a little bit of some tree green into these. I like the way it reacts with the olive, and so I just like to drop some in there while these are wet. Obviously, some of these are more wet than others. Just going to dab that right there just because it flooded the entire leaf. And then I'm giving that a rinse, and really I should have dragged some of that off, but I didn't think of it. I don't always think of it. I'm not going to beat myself up for that, but it is something I like to do if I think of it. So now I'm just going along where I had some of this olive green and just kind of softening to let some of that pigment bleed outside of the leaf too, just to keep it from completely overwhelming the leaf. And the olive that I had painted in there. And it just softens it up too. And then I can go back in with a little olive like this one that I completely obliterated. And maybe there. Just kind of let that do what it wants to do. Kind of give these a little more character, just some randomness. Those little jagged kind of areas. Fun. Just a little softening right here. I'm just taking a brush with water and just kind of softening that line so that maybe that tree green can kind of blend, kind of incorporate. I don't want too much. I don't want it to completely blend with the olive. And then I'd like to have a spot where I have some green. And I'm taking my olive. And then I like to add, and see, I'm using this green that's kind of here. I like to add a little bit of, you know, maybe burnt sienna. See how I'm just kind of dabbing that off, just kind of dragging, dabbing. It also helps not just conserving that, so I'm not wasting it, but also doesn't make my water quite as muddy. And I'm going to do raw sienna here, I think, and just see if I like that. So it gives it, you know, a little bit of an even warmer tone, but then it kind of differentiates it from the olive that I'm using. And I like that. You know, you blend the green that you're using with another color, and it just helps to tie those together. They're still cohesive, even though, you know, you are maybe now working with a warmer or cooler color. So I'm going to bring some of these multi-leaf kind of stems down here. I'm going to take a little burnt sienna into this. Yeah, that's a bit more what I want. Dragging that off because that's a lot of pigment. Okay, and I want to go kind of delicately. Have this tiny drop of water right there on the ferrule, right almost where my bristles were. So and I'm not too concerned with making these perfectly shaped. You know, obviously I could use a smaller brush, and I just tend to like to work with the tip of this brush. I feel like it does generally fine. And remembering that it's normal for some of the leaves to kind of overlap, underlap. Cute. Like that. Maybe another little stem going back behind the peony, maybe something kind of going behind the jar. Just some little details there that are just kind of escaping notice, but they're there. Then I like to drag my brush along the stem again and just kind of darken that, and maybe kind of drag it through a few of the leaves if they're dry enough, just to kind of create a little vein in those. Cute, fun. And how about one big sunflower right here? Ordinarily, I like to have more, but what if we just have 3 flowers? I'm not sure. Okay, don't hold me to it. But this is just what's kind of in my head right now. A big sunflower there. Get a good amount of this yellow deep ready. A little bit of water. I'm dragging some of that off in that corner. Okay, a big sunflower. So let's go here, here, here. I'm gonna make that a little bigger. I like it. It's giant. I love it. I tend to kind of use the side of my brush for these and then kind of go back to that. But the idea is shortening these petals that are closest to the eye. Oh gosh, I love that. That is going to be such a fun little arrangement. Love this. Okay. Let's go ahead and just want to see. It's kind of drying kind of quickly, so I think what I'll do is get some of my raw sienna. And sometimes I have a little bit of my yellow deep pigment, and I just kind of blend it with some of the raw sienna for a little layer here. I'm going to test it. Yeah, it's dry enough. This one I think may be a little dark, that first one, so let's just dab that. And then I am not a perfectionist or precious about all these little places here. I want these to be real loose and just kind of wild. So I like to put some of those little slashy things, you know, in between here. Just kind of looks like there are some petals back where we can't see them behind these. And can kind of go in between, and in between where where the petals are separated. And just have fun with that. These are fun. And you almost can't overdo them. I mean, you probably could. If you're me, you probably have. But they're just fun. Okay, that one was bugging me again because it seemed so dark. The value was so different from everything else that was there. And you can always go in if you like with another layer of yellow. I sometimes do. I feel like I'd like a little hint of yellow there. And I'm not too worried about anything else. I'm not worried about any of it. Let me clarify. But lots of those little wispies. It just makes that fun. And they can be messy. Goodness knows. You know, I am not a nice, neat sunflower person. Oh, I love these. I kind of wish I had gotten a little more water into these petals, but I'm just going to do that now because I love how these kind of bled and did some of that, pushing of the pigment like I mentioned. And so you have kind of that ferning effect. One of these days I'm going to look that up and see what the actual term is because I probably have heard it and I probably should know it and maybe I should teach it, but then again, who am I to tell myself what I should be doing? So there you go. Okay, getting a little more of this olive green ready because I know I'm going to need it for these sunflower leaves. And I just tend to like to use the olive, I don't know, I guess because it has a brown in it. I know a lot of people many artists use other colors, but I like it. And I will do my best to avoid my flower there. Let's see, there we go. And I feel like this one can be kind of coming out behind that peony. Okay, I'm going to drag this one kind of this way. Okay, I don't love what I did right there, and I'm not going to worry, but I just kind of lost control of myself. And so I am going to go back in. I'm going to wet this. I'm going to dab it with a bit before I start scrubbing at that. I'm going to dab it with my cloth. That just came up so nicely. And then rinse my brush, kind of give it a little scrubbity-doo here. We may have a little bit of residue left behind, a little yellow-green. But again, not going to worry, and I'll end up filling it with something, but I was sitting there doing that kind of mindlessly, not really thinking about, what am I trying to do here? And I am not the person capable of just kind of mindlessly doing leaves. It's not that great of an idea for me. Okay, love it. I'm going to leave that, I have to quit with that pun. It always comes out and surprises me, and I don't mean to say it all the time. Okay, how about let's get a little stem in here. I'm not going to have to see the whole thing because we've got that this leaf in the way. But what if we kind of go, let's see, I feel like the stem would kind of go like this. So what if I just kind of do that? And I don't worry about the entire stem being visible or being perfect or making the most sense. It's for me if it's close enough-ish. And I'm just adding a little, you know, these little bits of, oh, trailing, stemish, viney kind of things. But I love that. That's the best stem I ever did. Drag off some of that pigment. I had quite a bit of green on there. And whew, I'm loving this. It is just everything I hoped and maybe more. So that's kind of a nice idea too for me, that, you know, it is what I wanted. Okay, I want another of these, and I'm thinking I could put a couple right here. I just don't want to do them big at all. I might could do a small one here and two right here. And I'll start with these, but I want to keep it, you know, a little bit manageable. Let's see. Let's start in here. Where would my stem come from? How about right there? And then what about right there? Didn't keep that super loose, but that is all right. This direction tends to be a little bit easier because it's actually the direction of the eye and your brush, and I just feel like it goes a little easier. I don't want to have leaves that are too matchy-matchy, so I'm kind of keeping my eye on that. Those are getting a little out of control, but it is okay. I've decided that this time I'm going to allow that to be okay. This is a little overlap here. Remember, your leaves and stems can overlap. That's a little too much, but we're just going to leave that. Okay, just kind of fleshing out some little things back here. Okay, I'm loving that. And then how about one more right over here? Now, I don't want to match this curve of that, and I could just kind of go kind of out here, and maybe I'll do that. Often I will trip myself up by mirroring that or trying to make it more exaggerated, and then I end up kind of unhappy with that whole thing. So let me just go like this, and it doesn't need to overarch that or anything. Let me bring it kind of down here. That works for me. And then maybe even another one just peeking out, maybe even a little taller. Yeah, I love it. That really does work for me. Okay, now I want to just go in with some little kind of fill. Actually, I want to get my stems in here first. So let's come down with this. Let's see. And I'm just kind of filling with some leafish strokes, I'm taking a little bit of pigment up these leaves. And you know, like here, my pigment ended up on the underside of this leaf instead of in the center. That's okay. That just added a shadow to it effortlessly. So, you know, don't let your goofs be goofs. Don't let them goof you up. It's really okay. Now that is kind of a goof, and I think it would be okay, but let's clean that up a little. Okay, these are the kind of leaves I really easily do overdo. I just keep doing them, and it's not a good thing. I'll think, oh, I need to fill a little here or there, and then I just keep going and going, never knowing when to stop. So I'm going to stop, and I'm going to take some of my olive green and go into those sunflowers and just create some really loose veins. One thing I've noticed I will often do is I'll just kind of flip my brush in my hand, how I'm holding it, so that that little point that has kind of curved because of being used, it points a different direction. And also you have a different pigment load, you know, just little things that kind of keep it, just kind of help keep it loose. If you don't like a vein, swipe it with a little water like I just did. Just don't let your brain mess with you and make you think that you've ruined it because a vein has gone kind of weird, because goodness, that's misplaced anxiety or something right there. Okay, loving it. Just took a dab of water and just kind of cleaning up my dried pigment over here. And I'm going in and just with some randomish brush strokes, filling some of these empty white space areas. And what that ends up looking like is that there are shadows and leaves and all kinds of just delicious details in there that you've worked so hard to intentionally put there. And really, you just kind of played around with your brush. And you were just nice and relaxed. And just having some things peek out from the back there. Now this, I ended up touching my yellow. So I'm just kind of blending that toward the edge there. I'm not going to let it run my day. I'm just looking for any other little areas where I can just add a little. Now, when I did that, I ended up with some, I guess, moisture in my yellow. And so this time, let's kind of blend that out again and then touch it with the cloth. That way, the rest of that pigment can't just seep back into that leaf, that petal, excuse me. Hopefully. I mean, sometimes the pigment does what it wants to do. And remember, that was that spot there, and so I just put something in there. It's just a little background, you know, whatever. Okay, and now I'm going in with that brown green and just doing the same thing, but trying not to do it too repetitively, just not creating the same brush strokes, but just looking for some other places. And I need to get a stem in here for these peonies, because I have my beautiful sunflower stem. So let me do this. I'm going to take a mix of my olive and tree green, and I'm going to go whoop, and then wonder if this guy should come out of that same stem. Make this nice and thick so that it could be supporting two ginormous flowers here. Watch somebody come on here and say, peonies only grow one per stem. Actually, do let me know that if that's an important thing to know, because I paint some peonies, and I mean, I don't want to be ridiculous. Let's see. I think I may go right up like this for that peony. I don't want to have too much overlap with my beautiful sunflower, and I don't want to have a million stems. Okay, just do it. There we go. That works for me. Okay, let's give these some little somethings. My goodness, I am so in love. And now I'm just adding some of these little marks with this blend of color. This tree green and then maybe some leaves out here that just kind of overlap them. That's a lot right there. And that worked. Just dabbed it a couple of times, kind of faded it out. And I think actually I'd like to really soften this guy and kind of dab that out. Isn't that funny? That spot just wants to make me a little self-conscious today, doesn't it? It's like everything I do there. Okay, I'm going to actually make that leaf. I'm going to make him, yeah. There we go. That works. And then what if we do some just behind the scenes leaves that are really kind of bigger too, just to kind of balance this area out. I like that. Let's see. I like it. just these little light things that end up behind your existing leaves, and they just work so well. Now this one, I'm not going to let this completely ruin things for me, but I have a little fiber in there I can see. And oh, I think I got it. And if I didn't, I just pushed it into this darker pigment. But, you know, this isn't going in the Louvre, so I don't think anyone is going to take a magnifier to it or anything like that. Okay, how about something back here? Okay, just kind of have it curled over a little bit. And I did that by putting more pigment on there, and to me it just looks along that edge and then over that tip. To me it looks like that leaf is curled over onto itself. Okay, something back here, and just pull that. I didn't want to go too completely on that leaf that I had messed with so much. And then this one can be kind of curled up. And then what if we just soften this part here? Okay, I love this so much. I really love these curled leaves, and now I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, I have been missing out. I have to start doing some more of those. I've done them accidentally, and now I'm like, okay, that might be my whole new personality. And I'm thinking maybe another leaf back behind here. And, you know, we don't have to really see what's going on with him. You know, he's just behind the scenes doing his own thing. And how about something that just kind of underlaps or overlaps that? There we go. I'm happier with that. I felt like those were kind of hanging out there a little, you know, like all alone. I'm all alone. And back here. Just lots of things overlapping, underlapping. So it's working. Okay, I love it. I'm so happy with this. Oh my gosh. All right, let's take some, let's go with the yellow first. I'm going to take some of my yellow deep. And I just want to dot. I felt some water on my finger. I was thinking it was on my ferrule there, but maybe not. Just some of that yellow in there. Just those little centers. I do kind of like to overlap that back layer just a little bit so that we have some dimension there. And then I want to take my lamp black. You know, today I'm going to use the dark brown. I'm always saying, I'm going to use this lamp black for the center, but you can use a dark brown. This dark brown is a black brown. It is very much the deepest, darkest chocolate brown, and I like it. And then I like to give my ferrule a little extra, just cleaning, wiping there, so that I don't end up with any of this dark pigment flooding into my sunflower. I'm just giving it a rough oval shape, and I'm turning my brush a bunch, and I'm filling that in. I turn my brush because that tip gets so formed, and I like to be sure that it doesn't keep stamping essentially the same shape or pattern there inside of my flower. So I just turn it. And you'll see what I'm talking about as you do it. And you'll want to be sure to turn your brush. I'm leaving some white in there. Because sunflower seeds have that bit of white, don't they? Okay, I am not going to worry about perfection. For me, I feel like that is pretty much it. Maybe a few more onto this side. And I just love it. I love that. Okay, last little detail for me. And, well, okay, two more things. Going to add a shadow beneath this vase. Actually going to change my water first. Okay, so I changed that water, and I did that because I wanted completely clear water to be able to go right below here. And I want to just outline below this and just gently up the edge on the right. And then I want to just fill that, drop some of this pigment in. And then I'm just going to let this thing happen. Just kind of pushed it around there. And then just kind of go this tiny little bit over here. Oh, I liked it better before I did that. Yeah, just leave that. And maybe this guy needs a little table line so it doesn't look entirely like it's floating. Always intimidating for me to do that because a straight line where I'm not really sure where my horizon is, that's hard, you guys. May not be the most perfect straight line. I have a very strong suspicion that it is not. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to kind of make it straighter by making it a little thicker there. There we go. I think that works. I think it works enough. All right. And then lastly, I would like to just take some of my clean water and touch in here, just here and there. against these stems. Oh, that was a lot of water. And that's going to be okay. I'm going to soak some up with my rinsed and blotted brush. I'm just going to push some of this around. Just kind of a fun little process. Kind of finishes this out a little bit. And really kind of helps that idea of that being water in there. And maybe one more little bit of water, and what if I have a tiny bit more shadow here? And that just kind of made this swirl. Okay, I love it. I really, really do. And I'm going to call that finished. I had so much fun painting this today. And I learned some things. And I feel like that technique for those curled leaves, that is definitely something I'm going to practice over and over. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial today. I hope that you will come back, and I hope that you will share whether you painted this today or whether you're going to paint it. And as always, I love to hear about that in the comments, and DM me on my Instagram if you'd like to show me what you did. And as always, happy painting.